Shalom David Archive podcast, where discipline becomes power.
This is not motivation. This is transformation.
Right now, as you listen to this, you are actively engaged in a conflict.
Yeah, and the really terrifying part is you probably don't even know what's happening.
Exactly. I mean, we are so conditioned to think of threats as these massive, undeniable events, you know?
Right, like a sudden market crash or maybe a shouting match with a coworker.
Or an intruder at the door. We spend our lives installing these alarms, both literal and metaphorical, just waiting for a loud, obvious enemy to breach the perimeter.
But what if the way you've been taught to look for conflict, especially in your own life, is entirely backward?
Right. Well, that brings us to today's deep dive. Because we know you, the listener, are someone who loves to learn.
Yeah, you're constantly scanning the horizon, looking for ways to optimize, to improve, to build a tougher version of yourself.
You want to be prepared. But today, we are going to completely dismantle and rebuild how you understand the very concepts of conflict and defeat.
It is a complete paradigm shift.
It really is. We are pulling from the Shalom Davidarchive today, specifically an excerpt titled Win Without Fighting the Discipline Strategy, Episode 2. The silent discipline of internal conflict.
And our mission today is pretty ambitious.
Oh, definitely. By the time we finish this deep dive, you are going to look at your daily routines, your quiet habits, and especially those moments of so-called comfort with a completely new level of vigilance.
You're going to see the danger in the quiet moments.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because the author starts with a premise that immediately flips the script.
They argue that true conflict doesn't announce itself with noise. Instead, it moves in silence.
Moves in silence.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is the biological and psychological mechanism behind that specific word, silence.
Right, because of how we're wired.
Exactly. If you look at human evolutionary biology, our nervous systems are hardwired to respond to loud, immediate physical threats.
Like a predator jumping out.
Right. Or a car swerving into your lane. Your amygdala instantly hijacks your brain. Your adrenaline spikes, your focus narrows, and you naturally mount a defense.
It requires zero conscious discipline to fight back or run away in a crisis like that.
Yeah, your body just does it for you. But this archive text is isolating a type of conflict that deliberately bypasses those natural evolutionary tripwire.
Oh, wow. So it just slips right past the radar.
Precisely. Because this internal conflict doesn't trigger your fight or flight response, your body never floods with adrenaline.
So you literally don't feel like you're under attack.
And because you don't feel under attack, you don't mount a defense. That is exactly what makes this silent conflict exponentially more dangerous than a visible crisis.
Man, I mean, think about it like a house. We spend our entire lives preparing for the sudden Category 5 hurricane.
The loud, visible confrontation.
Exactly. We board up the windows, we stockpile supplies, we sandbag the doors, and we feel highly productive and vigilant because we are actively fighting a visible storm. Right, while we are staring at the sky, bracing for this massive external event, we are completely ignoring the silent termites in the basement.
Oh, that is a perfect way to look at it.
They are quietly eating away at the load-bearing beams 24 hours a day. The paint on the walls still looks perfect.
The alarm system is armed.
Exactly, but the structural integrity of the house is just being hollowed out from the inside.
And the author of the archive text explicitly tells us where these psychological termites actually hide.
Right, it's not where you'd think.
No, the source states that this silent conflict hides in your routine. It hides in your microscopic daily decisions.
And most chillingly, it hides in the moments that no one else sees.
Yeah, it is not happening on a battlefield. It's happening on a Tuesday morning at your desk when no one is watching.
That really shifts the entire paradigm, and the text then identifies 3 specific ways this silent conflict manifests in your everyday life.
3 masks it wears to avoid detection, essentially.
Right, but the archive doesn't just present these as a simple list. It presents them as this cascading sequence of internal surrender.
Starting with the first point of friction, which is distraction.
Distraction. Okay, let's talk about that.
We really need to be highly analytical about how the archive defines distraction here, because it fundamentally rejects the modern definition.
Right, because usually we blame distraction on our environment.
Exactly. The phone pinged, an email popped up, a colleague walked by.
We treat distraction as something that happens to us.
But the text says something entirely different. It says, you sit down to focus, and suddenly your attention shifts. Not because something is urgent, but because your mind is undisciplined.
Wow. That is conflict. That is just a brutal mirror to look into.
It strips away the excuse of the algorithm or the busy office environment.
Yeah, I mean, when you voluntarily open a new browser tab just because things get slightly difficult, it isn't an accident. It is an active loss in a silent war.
The mechanism at play here is cognitive friction. When you sit down to do deep, meaningful work, your brain encounters resistance.
Because it's hard.
Right. It requires heavy metabolic energy to focus. Your brain naturally wants to conserve energy, so it searches for an escape hatch.
So that urge to check your phone isn't actually about the phone?
Not at all. It's an urge to relieve the psychological pressure of the task in front of you.
That makes so much sense.
When the archive says your mind is undisciplined, it means you have allowed your brain to take the path of least resistance without putting up a fight.
Which naturally sets up the next domino to fall. Once your mind accepts that it doesn't have to endure that focus, you move from distraction into the second mask of silent conflict.
Procrastination.
Right. But again, the archive completely redefines the term. It doesn't frame procrastination as mere laziness or poor time management.
No, it frames it as a negotiation.
Yeah, the text states, you know what needs to be done, but you delay it. You negotiate with yourself.
That phrase right there, negotiate with yourself, that reveals the entire anatomy of the trap.
How so?
Well, think about what a negotiation actually is. It involves two parties sitting at a table trying to reach a compromise. When you procrastinate, those two parties are your present self and your future self.
Oh, wow.
Your present self wants comfort immediately. Your future self wants the long-term reward of having completed the hard work.
But your present self holds all the leverage in that moment.
Exactly. So you start bargaining, you offer excuses masked as logic, like, I'll be fresher tomorrow morning, or I really need to do more research first.
I do that all the time. I'll tell myself I just need to read one more article before I start, and the text delivers a devastating blow regarding that bargain.
What does it say?
It says you tell yourself later, but crucially, that later becomes a pattern. That is conflict.
Right. You aren't just shifting a schedule. You are establishing a precedent of surrender.
And that precedent breeds the third mask, which is inconsistency. This is the cycle where you start strong, you build a little momentum, and then you inevitably break it over and over again.
Yeah, the classic start and stop cycle.
But I have to push back on this a little bit on behalf of anyone listening who is currently juggling a career, a family, and just a million responsibilities.
Fair enough.
Are we being too harsh here? We live in an era of unprecedented information overload. I mean, sometimes later isn't a malicious negotiation with my own soul. Sometimes my kid is sick or my boss drops an urgent project on my desk and I literally just have to shift my attention.
Right, like life actually happens.
Exactly. Isn't shifting focus just a necessary survival skill for a busy life?
Well, the author anticipates that exact defense. It is the most common armor we use to protect our own egos.
Okay, so how does the text counter that?
If we analyze the text strictly, it removes circumstantial busyness from the equation entirely. The archive is not talking about genuine emergencies. It is explicitly targeting the moments where you have the agency, you have the time, you have the intention, and you still choose to retreat. It defines this as a failure of internal discipline, an active ongoing conflict. When the text says your mind is undisciplined, it is pointing to the times when discipline was an available choice, and you actively decided not to make it.
So it leaves zero room to hide behind the busy life excuse.
Zero. Because it is talking about the silent moments when the only person in the room is you.
Man, that means we can't write off a lost morning as just an oops, I got distracted. It is a lost battle in a larger war.
And that really transitions us into the mechanics of losing.
Right. Why do distraction and procrastination carry such a heavy penalty? According to the archive, this specific, quiet battleground is exactly where most men lose.
The text highlights a terrifying reality about the nature of defeat. It says defeat happens not in dramatic moments, not in visible battles, but in small, repeated failures.
And then there is a line that should make everyone listening pause and evaluate their morning routine. The archive describes these small, repeated failures as the kind no one applauds and no one corrects.
That lack of correction is the deadliest part of the whole equation.
Right, because if you fail publicly, say you give a terrible presentation at work, or you drop the ball on a team sport, there is an immediate ecosystem of feedback.
Yeah, there's coaching, there is criticism.
There is a loud, undeniable mechanism forcing you to acknowledge the failure and fix it.
But when you negotiate your way out of doing the hard thing at 6 in the morning in your own living room, The world is completely silent.
You're operating in a total vacuum. No one applauds, no one corrects, your boss doesn't know you hit snooze 3 times.
Your friends don't know you spent 2 hours scrolling instead of building that side business you keep talking about.
Exactly. It happens in the dark.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we can uncover the profound psychological weight of what the author is revealing here.
Let's hear it.
Every single time you make that quiet choice, something permanent is happening inside your brain. The text explicitly states, every time you choose comfort over discipline, you weaken your position.
It's cumulative.
But the author takes it a step further, arguing, you train your mind to escape pressure instead of mastering it.
Wow.
That word train is the fulcrum of the entire argument.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we almost exclusively use the word training to describe a positive pursuit.
Right.
You train for a marathon. You train to learn a new language. You hit the gym to build muscle memory. We associate training with progression.
But the source material forces us to realize that training is totally neutral.
We are unconsciously practicing reps of surrender.
Yeah, and neuroplasticity provides the exact biological mechanism for what the text is describing.
How does that work?
Your brain physically rewires itself based on your repeated actions. It works like a river cutting through rock. The first time water flows over the rock, it meets resistance. But over time, it carves a shallow groove. Eventually, that groove becomes a deep canyon, and the water naturally, effortlessly rushes through it.
So every time you feel the friction of a difficult task and you choose the comfortable distraction instead, you are carving that canyon a little deeper.
You are literally insulating the neural circuits for quitting. Your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine to reward you for escaping the discomfort.
Wow, so you are teaching your nervous system that the solution to pressure is retreat.
Exactly. If you repeatedly escape pressure, your brain optimizes for escaping pressure. You become incredibly highly efficient at finding excuses.
You are building negative muscle memory.
And over time, as the text starkly concludes, that becomes your identity.
You stop being someone who occasionally procrastinates on a Tuesday and you fundamentally become a procrastinator.
Yeah.
This is how defeat happens, the archive tells us. Not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly, gradually, without resistance.
Which brings us to the ultimate consequence of this negative training, the anatomy of silent defeat.
Right, and the author draws a brilliant and terrifying distinction here. The text says, you don't collapse, you drift.
You drift, yes.
Because a collapse is loud. A collapse is the business going bankrupt overnight. A collapse is the hurricane tearing the roof off.
But drifting is the slow leak in the tire.
You don't even notice the pressure dropping until you're stranded on the side of the road. You drift away from structure, you drift away from control. And most tragically, you drift away from the person you actually promised yourself you would become.
This raises a vital question for anyone trying to apply this framework to their own life.
What's that?
How does this massive identity-altering drift happen without us ever sounding the alarm?
Right, how do we not notice it?
The text provides the answer by pointing to the ultimate camouflage. The illusion of normalcy.
An illusion of normalcy.
The archive warns, and the dangerous part is this. You won't even notice it at first, because everything will still look normal.
It says you will still be moving, you will still be thinking, you will still be planning. And this is the caveat that changes everything. You are not executing, you are not aligning, you are not progressing.
Yeah, the illusion of momentum is a powerful psychological anesthetic. We are incredibly adept at engaging in productivity theater.
Oh, productivity theater. I love that term.
You have a detailed to-do list. Your calendar is full of blocks. You are having meetings about the project.
You are researching the absolute best software to manage the project.
Exactly. To the outside world, and more dangerously, to yourself, you look like a soldier marching diligently on the battlefield.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I want you to think about your own workflow right now. How many times have we confused the act of planning with the friction of actual executing?
Probably more often than we'd like to admit.
Right. How many hours have you spent organizing your workspace, perfectly color-coding your notes, or reading 10 different articles on how to optimize your morning routine, all while the actual needle-moving hard work remains completely untouched?
We feel productive because we are in motion.
We are generating heat, but we are completely stationary when it comes to actual forward progress.
Because planning is safe, thinking is safe, organizing is safe. None of those activities require you to face the raw friction of execution.
And the archive is telling us to look past the superficial metrics of busyness.
Action, pure execution, is the only thing that actually requires discipline and invites the risk of failure. Everything else is just a sophisticated form of hiding from the internal conflict.
And the tragic irony, as the text highlights at the very end, is the ultimate result of this well-disguised silent defeat.
Because everything looks normal on the surface.
Right, and because you feel perpetually busy, the author issues a final warning. You will keep fighting battles that don't matter while losing the ones that do.
You pour your energy into the visible, noisy conflicts that offer no real return on investment.
You vigorously fight the overflowing email inbox. You battle the rush hour traffic. You engage in heated debates with strangers in the comment sections online.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
You feel like a warrior because you are constantly swinging your sword at these loud, visible, but ultimately meaningless external conflicts.
Meanwhile, the most consequential war of your entire life, the silent war for your focus, your discipline, and your core identity, is being quietly lost on the couch. This entire text demands a complete, ruthless audit of our daily lives. We have to fundamentally change the metrics by which we measure victory.
We really do.
We have to start measuring our wins by the noise we make, the arguments we win, or the external crises we put out. We have to start measuring our victories by the silent promises we keep to ourselves in the exact moments when no one is watching and no one will ever know.
The journey this text took us on is intense, so let's synthesize exactly what we've uncovered today.
Good idea.
We started this deep dive looking for the traditional, obvious signs of conflict, the loud, visible battles we've all been conditioned to prepare for.
But the Shalom David Archive forced us to turn the spotlight violently inward.
We discovered that the true battlefield isn't out there in the world at all. It's heavily localized in the unobserved, quiet moments of our daily routines.
We learned that distraction, procrastination, and inconsistency are not just harmless quirks of having a busy schedule.
Or an overloaded brain.
Right.
Yeah.
They are active, daily surrenders. They are the tactical masks that silent conflict wears to trick us into choosing cheap comfort over necessary discipline.
And we explored the terrifying biological reality of negative training. Every single small negotiation with our own excuses, every time we delay the hard work for the illusion of later, is a rep that builds the neural pathways of defeat.
We carve the canyon of surrender deeper and deeper.
Until one day, we look around and realize we haven't collapsed, but we have drifted miles away from the person we intended to be.
And preventing this drift requires one fundamental, non-negotiable change in behavior.
We have to stop the negotiations entirely.
The internal bargaining table has to be permanently closed. When a disciplined action is required, the option of later must be removed from the vocabulary.
There is only execution or there is surrender. There is no middle ground.
Yeah.
The text warns that until we recognize this silent defeat, we will spend our lives exhausted fighting all the wrong battles. So I want to leave you with a final thought to take with you into your routine today.
Let's hear it.
If the deepest, most destructive conflict in your entire life is entirely internal and completely silent, then true victory doesn't require defeating an external enemy at all.
No, it doesn't.
It begs a profound question. What would actually happen tomorrow morning if you simply stopped negotiating with your own excuses? Who would you become if you finally won the silent war?
The invisible termites would finally be starved out.
You wouldn't just be boarding up the windows for a loud storm that might never arrive. You would finally be securing the foundation of your own life, brick by quiet brick.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, understanding these hidden psychological mechanics isn't just theory. It is the ultimate shortcut to taking absolute control over your time, your actions, and ultimately, your identity. Until next time.